everyone, hope you're keeping alright. Chins up, nearly Christmas. So I said a couple of weeks ago that we were going to take a look at the Cludbur, because the Cludbur are the big new race. Everything else, I think, everything else apart from the monsters and the laws of the seasons are sort of developments of creature types that already exist within the core rulebook of the woods. So you've got some extra Fey stuff, you've got some extra Tuatha stuff, you've got some extra gnome stuff, you've got a bit of a reference to the goblins, you've got some extra Miri stuff, but the Cludbur are entirely new. And I wanted to talk about the Cludbur in response to a question or a comment that was made a couple of weeks ago, suggesting that the Seven Valleys, which is the home of the Cludbur, the place where they live, it sounds a bit like the Seven Valleys, and that someone had misread that as being the Seven Valleys. And actually that is very close to the truth. So about 2 years ago now, just over 2 years ago now, which is a shockingly long time ago, only about 18 months since we got the house in order, but we moved, my wife and I, to a little place called Stonehouse, a little town very near Stroud in the Cotswolds. And because I'm a big fan of local history and sort of tying into events and things that have happened locally, getting a bit of a feel for the history of the place, and because my wife's family certainly on her dad's side, are from Stroud, so they have a kind of local family history as well. I sort of really wanted to get involved, and the Cludbur are a thing that has come out of my my kind of research and my kind of investigation into the local history of the place. The Cludbur are, to all intents and purposes, hobbits. You may decide from from their aesthetics and from the styles. We say halfling because that's the not intellectual property way of referring to them. But there are a lot of halfling hobbit sculpts around, and they tend to be sort of fat, short-legged, beardless dwarves. But actually, my view of hobbits, or my vision of hobbits, well, let's have a look at it. Very much influenced by Alan Lee's artwork here, and let's see if I can make this work. So, in a hole in the ground lived a hobbit. Let's find a picture of Bilbo Baggins. I'm sure it's early on in here. There it is. So you can see, hopefully, possibly, maybe in that image, Alan Lee's hobbits are actually quite long-legged, and although they're paunched, they're not particularly fat, and that is a look that is very similar to the way that Arthur Rackham, for example, portrays dwarves. They're kind of gangled, they're short, but they're not sort of stumpy proportioned, which I think makes hobbits look a bit sort of stupid and lumpy, and I prefer this kind of slender look. And it's a bit difficult when you come to sculpt something that nobody else is doing, because you think, are people going to be able to use this with anything? Am I just creating sculpts that either I'm going to have to do 50 of these sculpts, or they're going to be useless and no one is going to buy them? But in this case, I think probably for role-playing purposes, there's enough demand for slightly leggier halflings. So that's my emphasis and my basis for the Cludbur. And I know that Tolkien's Cludbur, the Shire wasn't necessarily Gloucestershire, which is where I'm living now, but I look out the back window here and we've got lovely rolling Cotswolds out the back, and I just think that's absolutely quintessential Shire to me. So if there were going to be a fantasy race that I would base in the area where I live, it would be halflings, hence the Cludbur. Now Cludbur, as I mentioned, the name of the place that I live is Stonehouse. The Old English for that is Stanhus, It sounded a bit Scottish then, didn't it? Stanhus, which means stone house, because there was an old manor house here that was probably one of the first stone-built manor houses in the country. So it took its name from that. And house in Irish Gaelic, I believe, it's been a while since I looked into this, but I think it was Irish Gaelic, is Cludbur. So Stan Cludbur would be stone house in Irish Gaelic. That was a bit of a mouthful, so I decided to just take the Cludbur bit from that, the house bit, and use that as my name. But the Stan bit, the stone bit, comes into its own when you come to the principal city of the Cludbur in the seven valleys, number 7 valleys, but based on the 7 valleys, which is where I live, where there are in fact 5 valleys. So there you go. So their principal settlement is called Stanclud, stone from, and then the first part of Cludbur, and the Stanclud standing army is the Stan Hussars, and I wanted to bring a bit of kind of Brittonic culture into the Cludbur. So their background in the woods is that they come from an isle that has sunk, like kind of Lyonesse in folklore, although it's the isle I think is called Lys, so it's an abbreviation of Lyonesse. So they're this kind of Brittonic, slightly French, Celtic people who have washed up on the shores of Talamla and have built their settlement in a place where they can be generally left alone. They've been trying to keep out of the way of the big folk of the Tuatha as much as they can, but they're engaged in trade with the Norlocks and the Gnomes and various others. And so the Stan Hussars are their standing army, and they're mounted on goats, because halflings on goats seems to be a very common thing, and it's a thing that I really like. And the goats that the Stan Hussars ride are very particular, long-haired breed that come from a town called Inglenook. And again, somebody said, "Oh, I live near Inglenook Woods. Is this a reference?" And it's not. It's just that I really like the name, the word Inglenook. Look it up if you don't know what it means. It's a great word. And so I thought, yeah, there should be a halfling village called Inglenook. That's quite right. So the Inglenook longhairs are the goats. They're these white, long-haired goats, very much like the kind of military mascot goats that you might have seen in Victorian army photos. And I just love the idea of these very, very French hussars charging down on these military mascot goats, and that sounds good to me. So yeah, Inglenook and Stanclud are the two named settlements in the valleys. The only other reference that's really made to the valleys outside of the Cludbur section of the book is when you come to the Book of the Golden Goat at the back, which is an Inglenook Longhair who has particularly golden fleece, which is seen as being an omen and a sign that a kingship is going to be restored. So I'm not going to tell you too much about that, but that's the basis of the story. And they have to escape from the 7 valleys, and one of the valleys that they escape down is called the Windle Valley. And again, the person who said, "Oh, I live near Inglenook Woods and my village is the Windle, or is Windle." And it's like, oh, I had no idea that there were 2 places close together, but I'm not going to do anything about it. The Windle Valley is a reference to Tolkien, of course. The Withy Windle is the river in the Old Forest that they have to fight their way through, and they get caught by Old Man Willow. So the Windle Valley scenario is a very similar kind of feel to that. It's about trying to make your way through an overgrown valley, but in this case it's pixies and gnolls that the brave Cludbur adventurers have to contend with. So yeah, that's a bit about our local history. Oh, sorry, one more thing. The logo of Stonehouse is a rose, a red rose, and that's based on a what is it? It was like a tithe to the king for the manor of Stonehouse that was recorded as being a rose per year or a rose per quarter. I think it was a rose per year. Now that's obviously some reference to a monetary value that has got lost somewhere in time. But the rose for that purpose has remained as the symbol of Stonehouse to this day. So obviously the symbol of the Stan Hussars and the Cludbur in general is a red rose on their shields. So I hope that has given you a bit of an insight into this new race. Please don't come knocking on my door, or do come knocking on my door, you know. Let's go and have a beer or something. There's a couple of good pubs nearby. And if you do live anywhere near anywhere that is mentioned in any of the Woods books, my apologies, and my representations are nothing to do with those places, are not based on those places at all. But if you are a particular fan of local history, you know anything about your local history and it's interesting and it would tie in, let me know, because these places are all just kind of roughly mapped out initially, and then as we have a look at more books and more miniatures are released, the world grows and it fleshes out, and it would be great to include some of those references in it. So yeah, do get in touch if there's anything that you want to have mentioned perhaps in a book, or if there's something that you think would be interesting. On that same note, you'll have seen that in last week's episode when I was having my little chat with Chris. That's going to be a new thing, because frankly I think you're probably sick of the sound of my voice and it'd be nice to hear what other people have to say. So I'm going to be doing a beverage and a baked good sessions as and when they pop up and they seem like good and interesting things to do. So if you would like to be involved, you don't have to have anything particular that you want to talk about, but if you have anything particular that you want to talk about, that's great. If you just want a chat, and it could be about the place where you live and its history, it could be about some general folklore, it could be that you know a really good folklore story and you just want to tell it, it could be that you've got some questions about the way that we write stuff, the way that stuff gets printed, the way that stuff gets published, the way that we test games, the way that we sculpt stuff, the way that stuff gets cast, the way that we organise Kickstarter campaigns. Any questions that you've got, if you want to interview me, that's fine, that's great. But frankly, I would rather interview you if you've got an interesting story or an interesting insight, and it could be into classic miniatures, classic games, something that really bugs you about the way that the gaming industry is going. Something that you're really excited by that's coming up, something that you're really proud of, TV programs or books or music that's been a massive influence to you in your gaming career. We're interested to hear it, so do get in touch, and I'd be very happy to sit down with a beverage and a baked good and chat to you for half an hour. So yeah, do let me know, and in the meantime, stay safe, have a nice week, and see you next Wednesday.